Joel is not a hero. Joel is not even a villain. Joel is a grieving father who is given a second chance at fatherhood, and he will do anything to protect his daughter, no matter what the cost. Because how do you even begin to judge someone who chose love over logic, instinct over ethics, a father's heart over the world's future? His journey is not one of moral clarity, but of sacrifice, the things a father is willing to do for the safety of his child. There has been endless debate over whether Joel was right or wrong in what he did. But maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe Joel's journey was never about morality. It was about being human, a flawed and a broken human, trying to make sense of a world that no longer made any. This video isn't about justifying Joel's actions or criticizing them. Instead, we'll strip away these labels and try to understand the man behind them, and why his story still holds a special place in all our hearts. Just like all of us, Joel carries flaws, scars, and contradictions. But what makes him one of the most beloved characters in history of fiction is that his flaws don't come from malice or ego. They stem from something deeply human, a place of purity, of innocence, of unbearable love. Every act he commits is rooted in a father's unshakable responsibility to protect his child. He's not trying to save the world, he's trying to save his world. He's just trying to protect the only light he has left in it, and that makes him painfully and beautifully real. Now let me be clear, I'm in no shape or means trying to justify the violence Joel engaged in. All I'm trying to do is break down what pushed him to these lengths. Joel is a mirror that reflects some of the most uncomfortable and human questions we carry inside us. How far would you go to protect someone you love? What would you sacrifice to hold on to meaning in a world where nothing matters anymore? This isn't just a character analysis, it's a reflection on pain, on love, on grief, on survival, and ultimately on what it means to be human in a world that has stopped feeling human. This is not a story of a hero or a villain, it's a story about what happens when love and trauma collide. This is the story of Joel Miller. I want you to pause and think of someone who has lost everything. Imagine what they would do just to be able to have a moment again with their loved ones. This is the state we find Joel in when he has lost his daughter Sarah at the beginning of the outbreak. For many, the outbreak signaled the end of the world, but for Joel, it was the end of his world. We can see very early on that he's ready to compromise on his morality to protect his loved ones. Instead of helping the desperate family on the side of the road during the outbreak, he tells Tommy to keep driving. This is a chilling moment, no doubt, not because Joel is cruel, but because it reveals a cruel truth about him, that when it comes to the people he loves, he will always choose them no matter what. That split-second decision to prioritize Sarah's safety over a stranger's life sets the foundation for every major choice Joel makes from that point forward. The loss of Sarah is the defining trauma of Joel's existence. It's not something he simply gets over, it is a wound that shapes every decision he makes, every relationship he cautiously forms, and every wall he builds around his heart. The raw, heartbreaking pain of that night still haunts him. Through Joel, we can see what happens when grief becomes a life sentence. In the 2 decades that follow Sarah's death, Joel never truly heals. He buries his vulnerability in the darkest corners of his heart and uses detachment as a defense mechanism. He also pushes aside his brother Tommy, who as opposed to Joel seeks redemption and hope through community and order. Their contrasting paths highlight different ways people cope with trauma and loss. Tommy finds meaning in rebuilding, in creating a family beyond blood ties, while Joel remains stuck in survival mode, carrying the weight of his pain all alone. His conversation with Tommy, where they talk about how they committed terrible acts over the past years in the name of survival, is just another reminder of the person that Joel had become. The closest thing Joel had to companionship through his pain was Tess. The game never spells out the nature of their relationship, but there is something undeniably intimate in the way they interact. An affection that lingers just beneath the surface, never fully spoken, never fully realized. Tess understands Joel in a way very few people ever could. She doesn't try to fix him, she doesn't pry into wounds he's buried deep. Instead, she simply exists alongside him, a quiet presence that offers him the illusion of normalcy without demanding more than he can give. And that's why her death hits differently. It doesn't just mark the loss of a partner, it reinforces Joel's most deeply held belief that letting people into his heart is dangerous, that letting someone in will only ever end in loss. Tess's death doesn't break Joel, it hardens him further. It pushes him into a shell he's built around his grief. The weight of survival bears down on him like a physical force, teaching him to trust no one and above all to guard himself emotionally. But as we say, there's always light at the end of the tunnel, and that light was Ellie. At first, she's just a job, a package, a responsibility he didn't ask for. And in a way, his refusal to form a connection with her is his final act of self-protection. He can't go through that kind of heartbreak again. If he lets her in, he begins to care. Then he once again risks losing something he can't bear to lose. But Ellie was Joel's missing puzzle piece. Not because she reminded him of Sarah, but because she unknowingly offered him something he hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose. Both Joel and Ellie were scarred by loss, but they processed it in completely different ways. Ellie clung to the hope that her suffering meant something, that being immune gave her pain a purpose, a reason to keep going. Joel, on the other hand, had no such anchor. Since Sarah's death, he had been drifting through life in survival mode, carrying a void so deep it became part of him. But when Ellie enters his life, that void begins to shrink, not because she fills it, but because for the first time in decades, Joel has someone to care for again, someone to protect. Ellie doesn't just become a mission, she becomes his second chance. A chance to rewrite the past, a chance to feel whole again, even if just for a while. With Ellie, he doesn't just find a replacement for Sarah, that would be an insult to both characters. He finds his second chance to be a man he once was. Not the hardened survivor, but the father, the protector, the person who had love in his life. This is why Joel is so fiercely protective of Ellie. It's not just about keeping her alive, it's about preserving the one thread of meaning he has left. As the story progresses, we can see Joel begin to let his guard down. His fatherly instincts are now in full force as he subconsciously views Ellie as his second chance at Sarah. In Ellie, Joel sees something he thought was lost forever, a reason to live. And here is the thing about meaning. Sometimes it slips in through the cracks, in the form of a shared pun, a stolen glance, or a simple high five. Moments so small you could almost miss them, but when you're starved of purpose for 20 years, they become everything. When Joel and Ellie arrive in Jackson, we witness one of the most powerful and emotionally charged scenes in the entire game. Joel contemplates handing Ellie over to Tommy, convinced she'd be safer in his brother's care. And that's the thing. This isn't selfishness, this is a father's instinct. Joel is trying to make the right call, not for himself, but for the one person who has come to mean everything to him. It's one of the clearest signs that Joel is no longer thinking like a smuggler or a survivor. He's thinking like a parent. I'm going to let this short clip play before I further dissect this scene.
Maria told me about Sarah.
Ellie? You are treading on some mighty thin ice here.
I'm sorry about your daughter, Joel, but I have lost people too.
You have no idea what loss is.
Everyone I have cared for has either died or left me. Everyone fucking except for you. So don't tell me that I would be safer with someone else, because the truth is I would just be more scared.
You're right. You're not my daughter. And I sure as hell ain't your dad. And we are going our separate ways.
Ellie sees through Joel's attempt to protect her by pushing her away. She doesn't plead or beg. Instead, she does something far more vulnerable. She reminds him that she's not Sarah, that no one else could possibly understand her the way he does. And most importantly, she tells him that she feels safer with him. Joel's immediate response is to deflect, not out of anger, but out of fear. The fear of feeling again, of letting someone in, of having someone to lose. Because acknowledging how much she means to him would make the risk of losing her unbearable. But that moment changes him. Deep down, Joel realizes he can't keep hiding behind detachment. So for the first time, he pushes past his fear. He embraces Ellie, not with words, but with a choice to stay by her side. And from that moment on, their journey is no longer about an obligation or survival. It's about love, a broken man and a broken girl choosing each other not because they are whole, but because together they give each other something to live for. Not long after, the roles between Joel and Ellie are reversed. Joel, who had spent the entire game shielding Ellie from danger, suddenly finds himself on the brink of death after being impaled at the university. In those blood-soaked, frantic moments, his only concern isn't the pain or whether he'll survive. It's Ellie. With every last breath he can muster, he tries to make sure she's safe, that she runs, that she lives. This moment is a raw, unfiltered testament to how far Joel has come. From the emotionally shut-off survivor we met at the start, to a desperate father figure who would trade his life in an instant if it meant keeping her out of harm's way. His body is broken, but his will, his purpose is stronger than ever, and that purpose is Ellie. But what makes this moment even more powerful is what follows. Ellie steps up, she becomes a protector, she hunts, she fights, she survives all for Joel. It's not just a role reversal, it's a reflection of what Joel has given her. Strength, resilience, and a reason to keep going. In saving him, Ellie is also honoring what he has become to her. Not a burden, not just cargo, but family. What makes Joel such a hauntingly complex character is the stark contrast between the tenderness he shows towards Ellie and the brutal violence he's capable of inflicting on others. His love is real, raw, and protective, but so is his rage. And often that love and that violence exist side by side, each feeding into the other as part of the same survival instinct. The interrogation scene especially reveals this raw, unfiltered side of him. But beneath the surface, it's not cruelty that drives Joel, it's fear. Fear of losing the only person who's given his life meaning again. His brutality may isolate him, but in his eyes, it's the ultimate expression of love. Because in a world where softness gets you killed, Joel chooses to harden himself, so Ellie never has to. When we get to the infamous hospital scene, he learns that to potentially save the world, Ellie would have to die, and he doesn't hesitate. He kills everyone in that building, including the only person who could make a cure. He crosses every moral boundary to save the light of his life. That's why the hospital scene doesn't feel like a plot twist. It feels inevitable. It's the final tragic culmination of a truth that's been echoing in Joel's heart ever since Ellie walked into his life and unknowingly reminded him what it means to truly live again. Joel didn't save Ellie out of heroism. He saved her because he couldn't lose her. He couldn't lose himself again. He was trying to hold on to the one thing that tethered him to his humanity. And that's the heartbreaking paradox of Joel Miller. The same love that brings him back to life is the love that drives him to destroy everything else. But in saving Ellie, Joel didn't just take lives, he took away her choice. He robbed her of the purpose she had come to believe in. Deep down, he knew that she would have wanted that she was ready to make her pain and suffering mean something, that her survival could help end all this suffering. But Joel made that decision for her, and here's where the beauty and tragedy of it collide. He didn't make that choice as a savior, he made it as a father. To Joel, Ellie wasn't humanity's last hope, she was his, and no father would willingly sacrifice their child no matter what the cost, no matter what logic. We as humans make decisions that aren't always guided by logic or morality, but by love, fear, and the desperate need to hold on to what we have already lost once. Joel's choice was a reflection of that very instinct, not to do what was universally right, but to do what he felt was right for him, for his child. And maybe that's the point. The Last of Us doesn't give us answers, it gives us questions about love, about sacrifice, about how far we are willing to go for the people we can't afford to lose. In part 2, we begin to get an answer to these very questions, that with making a choice you also have to bear the cost associated with it. Joel, in saving Ellie and stealing her purpose from her, made Ellie's life meaningless in a way. He lies to her that there was no cure, and in doing so, he saved his world but destroyed Ellie's. The daughter he had fought so hard to keep close was now starting to drift away from him. In a way, she was becoming the Joel that we knew from the majority of the first game, a purposeless man just drifting by. Ellie could not find meaning to her life, and when she finds out the truth about the fireflies, her whole existence comes crashing down. The person whom she trusted the most was the one that stole her purpose from her. Joel is now bearing the brunt of his choices. Even though he saved Ellie, he has lost her in a completely different way. The night before Joel dies, we see both characters beginning to reconcile. I want us to watch this scene together because it carries so much emotional weight and provides the biggest insight into Joel's character.
I'm not trying to.
I was supposed to die in that hospital. My life would have fucking mattered. But you took that from me.
If somehow the Lord gave me a second chance at that moment, I would do it all over again.
Yeah. I don't think I can ever forgive you for that. But I would like to try.
I'd like that.
Okay. I'll see you around.
Yep.
Joel says that he would do it all over again if he had a second chance. This tells us something heartbreaking, that he has no remorse for the choice itself. Yes, he feels sorrow for what he has taken from Ellie, her agency, her purpose, her right to choose. But if faced with the same moment again, he'd make the same decision without hesitation. Because for Joel, Ellie had become his world, and saving her wasn't a choice he made in defiance of humanity. It was a choice he made because to him she was his humanity. His actions weren't driven by logic or ethics, but by love. A flawed, selfish, deeply human love. Joel thought he had more time to fix things with Ellie, but time ran out. The ghost of Joel's past came back to haunt him. In one of the most brutal scenes in gaming history, we watch Joel, this deeply flawed, fiercely loving man, die in front of the very person he tried to protect above all else. And that's the tragedy. He spent his entire time with Ellie trying to protect her from the world, only for her to end up walking down the same path of darkness that Joel himself once walked on. Even in his final moments, Joel opens his eyes to take one last glance at the light of his life before he moves on from this world. Joel was by no means a perfect man, not even close. He wasn't a hero, and many of his choices, especially the violent ones, caused irreversible harm. But what made us connect with him was that he was real. Yes, he was flawed, but he was also deeply human, shaped by grief, trauma, and a desperate need to hold on to the one thing that has given his life meaning again. We don't excuse what he did, and the game never asks us to. Instead, it invites us to sit down with the discomfort of loving a character whose actions we cannot always defend. Joel's story isn't about redemption or justice, it's about the complexities of love, the weight of loss, and the cost of trying to reclaim something once broken. And maybe that's why his story, even in its darkest moments, still resonates with us. Because in Joel, we don't see a hero, we see a father, a protector, a man who loved fully, selfishly, and unconditionally.